We got another one of them, popping at the mouth or the side of his neck when he pouts. No argument, no rebuttal from. He ain't from my town, I don't know him, so I'm guessing he's a clown.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. So I woke up today to a hashtag, Free Malakai Black. And I was like, huh? What's this all about? So I look into it and I see that Raj Giri, formerly of Wrestling Inc., put out a tweet. It says, I heard an AEW star has requested their release, and follow-up sources indicate it was Malakai Black. He reportedly has shown concerns about his mental health due to personal life and demoralization due to the booking and handling of his character. Unquote. And I was like, wait a minute. I heard from some sources that Malakai Black was a guy who wanted to leave AEW. I take everything with a grain of salt, so I hope nobody gets offended when I just say I just don't believe shit that people tell me. I try to look for extra information. And then Meltzer Says What, which is a great account on Twitter. He posted out something that Malakai Black wrote on his Tumblr account, where it says, and it's under the name Malakai Black, but it's TommyEnd.tumblr or something like that. And it says, 2 years of this. Sometimes it feels like all of it will be to no end, nor have any real meaning when it's all over and done. It's strange to think certain things in your life will be a memory with no attachments anymore, while they were once the most important thing in your life. It truly feels like the entire journey happened for the sake of happening. I have no idea what this means, but basically he's saying that there's no, reading between the lines, there's no content to any of this stuff, that he doesn't feel like it has any meaning to it. And it's very vague. He's not saying, I asked for my release from AEW and they won't give it to me. Instead, he's being very vague and just saying that he feels like something that was at once the most important thing to him no longer has that sort of importance. And that's very interesting. That's an interesting thing. Now, I remembered that I saw an article several weeks ago, on August the 10th. Malakai Black makes scary admission about recent injury. This is from Wrestling Inc. He says, till about 3 months ago, I was dealing with a back injury I was convinced was going to force me into retirement. But after a literal year of treatment, that went from working to complete failure on several occasions. We all of a sudden hit the correct vertebrae during a dry needling session and everything released. From there, we were able to rehab and strengthen. You can check video 2 for this horrendous view and my personal reaction to it. However, allowing me now a few months later to slowly move back into deadlifting and a few more compound moves. So this guy has been dealing with a serious back injury for a long time. He was down in the dumps, maybe, because physically, his body is breaking down. He's 37, by the way, so he's almost 40. So you got this guy, he's almost 40. Maybe creative isn't the best for him right now. Mentally, he's dealing with a lot of injuries. I can see why this might be a stressful situation that he might want to get out of his contract. But until, he says something about it, we don't know. And of course, Raj Giri is the guy who put out that Sasha Banks was released from WWE and now Sasha Banks is back and whatever. So you have to, beg the question, how much of this stuff is true? Or, how much is people reading the tea leaves? To be quite honest, in looking at this thing, I can see that it might be true. And there's a lot of fans that are, free Malakai Black, he needs to be free. And it's like, I'm usually on the side of the promotion. Like if you agree to a contract, then you should stick to it. At the same time, though, I do believe in exceptions. I do think if this guy has a serious mental health problem due to, likely dealing with this serious back injury, he just needs some time away from the business, then you should definitely give it to him. And if you feel like he's just going to jump shit to WWE, you could always craft a deal where, like WWE would do with the non-competes. Just do a non-compete. He can't do of course, it can't be 3 years, which I heard his contract is like 5 years long or some nonsense like that. I'm not saying that guys should have a 3-year non-compete. That's not what I'm saying. You know, what I'm saying is he should do a non-compete where there's maybe, I don't know how long those things can be. There's a legal limit to those things, I think. You can't give a guy like a 2-year non-compete or anything like that. So maybe 90 days, which is like a typical WWE non-compete is like 90 days. And people have challenged those things and been able to get out of them, but whatever. So you really test to see if it's really mental health or does he really just want to jump ship now that Vince is gone. And you test that by, kind of what WWE did with FTR. When they wanted out of their contract, they had to negotiate away certain things, certain royalties and certain rights or whatever. They just wanted out bad enough that they didn't care. There's literally a story that just came out the other day about Darby Allin buying himself out of his own contract and with another company. I don't know what it was, in order to jump ship to AEW. So it's possible for guys to get out of these contracts, but how badly do they really want to get out of them? Tony Khan seems to be the kind of guy that says you'll have to sit your contract out, so that's just kind of how he's been doing things. He hasn't been firing people or releasing them. He's just kind of been sending them home and letting them sit. But Malakai Black isn't being sent home and left to sit. He has a match at All Out, so that becomes the question, how much of this is true, how much of it isn't true. They're starting a storyline right now where, Darby Allin is saying that Brody King and Buddy Matthews doesn't need him. So maybe that's the direction they're going to go in, where they're going to have baby Buddy and Brody kick him out, and maybe that's going to send him home, and, that's that. We don't know. The likelihood of that is pretty slim, though, because I don't think AEW puts that much thought into these things, ahead of time. But it's an interesting question. Everybody seems to think that it's one big joke that Malakai Black wants to be released. We don't know for sure whether he wants to be released or not. So, what to do? We're just kind of sitting here saying, hey, it's speculation at this point. But I just kind of wanted to bring this stuff to the forefront because it's very interesting that I did hear about him wanting to retire due to a serious back injury. So it's not coming, completely out of nowhere, because he has wrestled matches since that article came out. We never know what might have happened. Maybe he tweaked his back in a different match or something like that, and it's bad again. We don't know. The guy is almost 40. He's not really where he wants to be in his career. Mentally, he's been fucked over by WWE. He's been underutilized by AEW. Maybe he does just say, fuck this, I want out. Maybe working in these big wrestling promotions isn't the right thing for me. Maybe, going at somewhere where I can be, a little bit more creatively free, even though that's AEW. You're not put in top feuds with top guys. You're middling somewhere in the back, only on the show maybe once or twice a month. That's not enough to really do any storylines, and even when WWE had him in the locker room cutting promos in the dark, at least it was weekly, at least he was on TV all the time. He just comes across to me like another Bray Wyatt, like a guy who has a message in what he wants to do with wrestling, but it's a message that other people don't really understand, a message that other people don't really get, and it's something that is difficult for him to express in any other way, on tops of frustrations and injuries and stuff like that. So he just comes across to me like another Bray Wyatt, another sort of tortured soul in the wrestling business who is looking for a creative outlet and maybe isn't getting the space that he needs in order to have that creative outlet. But that's all assuming this stuff is true. It could all be bunk at the end of the day. I'm going to say that at the end of this. It could all be bunk. We know the back injury isn't bunk because he wasn't wrestling for a long time and he wasn't really on TV either for a long time. AEW has sort of limited him to an entrance. Like, he's a cool entrance, and that's it. And that's unfortunate, where, you know, AEW haven't seen the mainstream crossover value of a guy like Malakai Black. And he was one of the guys that when Vince fired him, I was very upset. For starters, I was upset because they had put all that time into Tales from the Dark Father, and that stuff had some real meat behind it. And he was about to feud with Big E, and everything was about to work out, and then all of a sudden the rug was yanked out from underneath him. So I was pissed about that. And the guy is incredibly talented. He's a guy who can cut promos. They're kind of riddling promos, a lot like Bray Wyatt, where he talks in riddles. But the character was interesting. It's intriguing. He's a guy who living with a different view of the world. And I'm very interested in hearing what he thinks about things. Even though I know that, and I kind of took a hit when he was crying about Black Lives Matter, like literally crying. The image of the character took a hit for me, because I was like, ugh, you know, what is this guy doing? He's a very sensitive guy, you know, very sensitive. So I don't know, but I don't know whether to believe this or not, but I'm just looking up this hashtag and look at how everybody is reacting to it. I would say I'm surprised nobody mentioned that he did have a serious back injury, which plays into the mental health role, because a lot of wrestlers, especially at his age, when they have serious injuries that might make them want to retire, make them want to give up, that causes mental health problems. You know, they fall into the depression because they can't do what they want to do anymore. Their body won't react the way that they want it to anymore. That makes sense to me, you know, and that adds some credence to the fact that he might want to get out of this contract. He might not want to work there anymore. He might not want to work at all, you know. Now, he could just retire, you know, and still be under contract to AEW. They could pull a UFC and, oh yeah, you want to retire? Okay, fine. But we're going to keep your contract just in case you want to get back in the ring. That's a UFC move for you. But I don't know, man. I just think that I just wanted to add some color to it and say that it's not just internet rumors. There is some meat to this one. There's a lot of stuff floating around the internet about guys wanting out of their contracts, and I don't pay that much attention to it. Unless the guy tweets about it, I don't pay that much attention to it. But that injury leading to a guy wanting to retire, it literally happened to FTR as well. When Cash Wheeler got his arm torn open on Dynamite, there was talks about he didn't want to wrestle anymore. You know, that both of them really wanted to quit. And it took not only the rehab and to go through all of that stuff, but it took some deep conversations for them with their families and with each other to get them back in the ring. So I understand that, you know, these guys who get hurt, they want out sometimes, you know. So, and then we don't have no idea what is going on in his personal life, like what is going on with his family and everything too. So there's always something that can be questioned. But thank you guys for listening. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session. But you got an affection for no progression, regression. The best.